Hey guys, welcome back to the show, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I really didn't want to watch this movie, but based on the performance of the last video, I felt compelled to try and satiate this hunger for Munchie that I didn't know existed. Basically, I need the views. Hey, if you do a video and it performs really well, why wouldn't you follow it up with a similar video? There's a Munchie sequel, so yeah, I guess I gotta do it. So here we go again. It's Munchie Strikes Back. And he does strike back, but not in the way that you would think. I thought he would strike back with an even worse movie, but it turns out that's not possible. And can I just say, I know it's a small thing, but the fact that the title isn't centered kind of pisses me off. I can't be the only one. You guys notice this, right? Like, you see this? All the other credits are centered. Everything's centered except the title. It's almost like it was done on purpose to annoy you in advance. The movie starts at Chase's high school. Keep in mind, this movie came out 2 years after the original, and Chase has obviously had a growth spurt, and I have no idea what's going on here. They're having some kind of a party because school is out, so what, they're just allowed to run amok inside the school at night and party while the same band from the last movie sings about being hungry. And that's something I forgot to mention in the last video. He's called Munchie. I really thought watching the first movie that food was going to be a bigger part of the story because of all the references to eating things. They even had bite mark transitions, but they ate a pizza in that movie and that's it. Food had really nothing to do with the character. I will say though that in this movie there's a lot more instances of Munchie being hungry and talking about food and eating, so there's that. Anyways, Gage has grown up, not just in height, but in terms of the severity of the schemes he's willing to help Munchie with, because they use explosives to blow up the school, and apparently he doesn't want to stop there.
Come on, gang! Let's go blow up the DMV!
And this, to me, has gotten to an insane level. I mean, it started out pretty small in the first movie, you know, stealing pizzas, tripping people on soap and banana peels, changing grades on the computer, but it has now escalated to extreme vandalism bordering on terrorism. I think it's fair to say that Munchie is a legit demon, and it's pretty clear now that my alternate ending to the first movie where the cops blow Munchie's head off would have been the right thing to do. So Munchie gets zapped up to the astro plane, where Kronos, the master of time and space, is like, you shouldn't be allowed on Earth anymore because you're causing too much shit. But Cleopatra, Marilyn Monroe, Colonel Sanders, and Elvis Presley decide that he should be given another chance. So Kronos is like, fine, you can go back to Earth on probation, and you have to look after this family, Linda and Chris McClelland. And what does that mean? What does he expect Munchie to do? Munchie doesn't help people. Munchie just causes problems. I think that's been well established at this point. If you really wanted to help that family, you'd tell Munchie to stay the hell away from them. Or you could just blow his head off. It's always an option. Andrew Stevens played the character Elliot in the first movie, who I guess you could say ended up being the main villain. Well, he's back in this movie, but even though he looks the same, he's playing a totally different character who is also the main villain, which is kind of weird. Anyways, in this movie, he's Shelby Carlisle, the owner of the company that Linda works for, and he seems to be going for the high score when it comes to sexual harassment lawsuits. He wants Linda to accompany him on a business trip to Mexico alone, and she's like, hey, what about your family? And he's like, family? I don't give a shit about my family. Look, we don't even have a single picture together. But Linda isn't into his blatant advances, so he fires her. Oh no. Meanwhile, her son Chris is at school, playing baseball, but one of the jerk kids, Brett, isn't very happy with the coach as the umpire.
Try standing over here, coach.
Watch your mouth, Wilson. I know where you live.
I heard that a lot as a kid. Adults would say that all the time, and it's a great threat because it's pretty ambiguous, you know? I mean, what does that mean? Are you gonna come to my house and talk to my parents? Or murder me in the middle of the night? Either way, pretty scary. Anyways, Linda picks up Chris in her wood-paneled station wagon, which was the style at the time. And Chris is like, hey mom, you look kind of worried. Is everything okay? And she's like, I'm not worried. I'm fine. Everything is fine. By the way, off topic, we should start a new game. Let's see who can go the longest just eating crackers for every meal. And this is when the neighbor comes over, who is played by the same guy who played the principal in the first movie, and he starts bitching about the sprinklers being too high, and she's like, well, my husband did all that, and he's dead, so F off. That night, Chris is admiring a photo of his dead father, when suddenly he looks out the window and sees his crush, Jennifer, walking with Brett, the jerk. And talk about a double shot of depression. First your dad dies, and now this. But before Chris is able to throw himself out the window and end it all right then and there, Munchie shows up. So Munchie is like, hey, I'm here to solve all your problems. And Chris is like, can you bring my dead dad back to life? And Munchie is like, I'm here to solve all your problems, except your dead dad. How about some video games?
Come on, ask for something. Anything you want.
Okay, what I really want is some reassurance. You know, that I'll be able to survive growing up in this cruel world. That I'll actually have a purpose, you know, and that someone at some point will see some value in me and possibly even love me.
There are limits.
So Munchie gets him all this stuff like video games and a drum set, and in the morning Chris is like, oh crap Munchie, you gotta get rid of all this stuff before my mom sees. And I'm sorry, but what about the drum set? Did his mom not hear him playing on that? Munchie then gets rid of all this stuff, but says that it just went back to the mall because that's where it came from. Munchie doesn't create things from nothing, he just steals them. So then Chris starts mowing the lawn, and Munchie uses magic to give the lawnmower a mind of its own, and it starts mowing all by itself. Which is great until the mower becomes self-aware and decides that humans need to be eliminated and goes after the neighbor, trying to turn him into a bloody mulch. Again, all of this just reinforces what we already know about Munchie from the first movie. He's a criminal con artist who deserves not only to be in prison, I think he should get the chair. Which I know sounds kind of harsh, but think about how many people he's almost killed. Dozens. And he's harmed several children. That's not even debatable. So yeah, lethal injection is too nice. I want to see him fry. So now it's game time, and Chris's team is playing a team run by Shelby called the Stranglers, which really tells you what this guy is into. And at one point, Chris gets his coach a Coke from the locker room, and for some reason, Shelby starts poking around in there. Anyways, this is when he sees Chris talking to Munchie, who somehow looks worse from the side. So Munchie says he'll help Chris be better at baseball, and Shelby goes back to his team and starts giving them shit even though they're winning.
Let's go out there and stop acting like a bunch of mama's boys or something even worse.
What? A catcher? So Shelby tells his son, Shelby Jr., to hit the ball directly at Brett and injure him so that he's out of the game, because that's not psychotic at all. So Brett gets hit, and the coach puts Chris on the mound, and Munchie starts manipulating the ball to strike out all the batters, and Shelby is like, shit, now I gotta figure out a way to Nancy Kerrigan this kid too. After Chris hits a walk-off grand slam, he goes home and Jennifer calls, and she's like, hey, guess what? Brett has internal bleeding, which means he can't go to the dance tonight, which means that I can go with you. By the way, in case you haven't guessed, I kind of fill in the blanks with some things. Like they don't say some of this stuff, but I believe that it's implied. For example, she never says internal bleeding, but you know, you just kind of assume. So Munchie gives him a tux and a Rolex and a limo, and even transforms himself into a human limo driver, which I guess would mean that Munchie can take on any form he wants at any time, but he chooses to look like that. Which, you know what, I gotta give him credit. That's a lot of confidence in oneself. Because he is truly grotesque. Anyways, Chris starts acting like a real egomaniac. So much so that Jennifer is not impressed. They get to the dance and everybody there is already having fun and hopped up on bath salts or something, but Chris starts acting like a big shot because he won the baseball game. So Jennifer takes off. Munchie gives Chris the ability to read everyone's thoughts so that he can hear what they really think about him. And it turns out everyone thinks he's a real douchebag. So Chris is like, damn, when I was a loser, nobody liked me. And now that I'm a winner, nobody likes me either. And Munchie is like, yeah, you probably should have jumped out that bedroom window when you had the chance. But while they're talking, it turns out Shelby is at the dance, taking pictures of Munchie. And what the hell is he doing here? I mean, come on, Shelby, you don't have anything else to do? Don't you have a company to run and employees to force yourself upon and then fire? I mean, where is Luigi? So Chris has the realization that instead of trying to be a big shot, he should just be himself. And holy crap, there it is. The kid learns a lesson and tries to better himself. Something that didn't really happen in the first movie. So Chris's mom walks in and she's like, hey, you're not asleep yet? And he's like, no, probably because you insist on leaving all the lights on in the house. But I guess it's a good thing that you make so much money at your job that we can afford to waste all this electricity. She's like, Chris, I talked to the bank and there's a big mortgage payment coming up. I lost my job and there's no money saved up because your father spent it all on glamour shots. So you're gonna have to start pitching in around here. I guess it's a good thing that they closed all the local neighborhood mines except the one on our street. So you can get a job there just like I did when I was your age. And I mean, sure, there's always a chance that you could develop a case of the black lung, but your father and I were never really that impressed with you anyways. Unless you can find some other way to come up with $20,000, but of course you can't because you're just a dumb kid. Well, good night. Meanwhile, Shelby goes to see this guy who sells all kinds of weird stuff. His name is M.T. Graves.
M.T. Graves. You get it?
And I have to say, this guy is by far the greatest character in the movie. Both movies, actually. He's pretty funny. This whole scene has some pretty good jokes in it. So he's like, holy crap, I know this little bastard. He's older than time itself. Meanwhile, back at Chris's house, Munchie uses his magic and it starts raining money.
Snow in July?
I don't know if Linda maybe hit her head at some point, but there's just no way, even if you've never seen snow in person before, that you would think this was snow at first glance. So the next day they're bagging up the money, the news shows up and they're like, hey, how much money rained down on your house last night? And Linda is like, well, it's probably around $20,000, which is the exact amount that I needed to pay off the loan on our house. Okay, number one, the fact that you didn't go out immediately and bag up all that money, inexcusable. If it was me, I would have bagged up that money so fast, and even if the news showed up the next day like, hey, we heard a bunch of money rain down on your house, I would just be like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, I guess somebody must have, called in a prank to the news station. Sorry. No money here. Even if the news was like, well, every single one of your neighbors said that they saw all this money on your property, I'd be like, no, that was my son. He was messing around, trying to play a prank. He wasted all this paper. Trust me, he's been grounded. I don't want the whole town knowing that $20,000 just ended up on my front yard. Do you want to get robbed? Do you want to get investigated? If you come into some strange money, you don't tell anybody. And you definitely don't take it to the bank either. You keep it in a super safe place somewhere in the house. And every single time you go out to buy whatever, shoes, clothes, new TV, phone, computer, whatever, all cash. So immediately some guy shows up and he's like, hey, I'm from the Treasury Department. And the serial numbers on these bills are part of a series that hasn't even been printed yet. I'm gonna have to confiscate all this money. See, what did I say? Okay, so I realize that at this point, it may seem like I've been through something like this before. I haven't. I'm just really prepared. So Linda is like, well, it was great while it lasted, and I'll have whatever drugs she's on, because there's no way I'd be able to just shrug that off. Shelby wants to steal Munchie, so he breaks into the house extremely easily, and now this basically turns into Home Alone, which is not a bad thing, I might add. So Shelby puts Munchie into a garbage bag, which is hilarious because this is exactly what happened last time. And now the chase is on. again. And I have to say, this chase is much better than the one in the last movie. The stunts are better. I'm actually interested watching this. Now, at this point, I wasn't holding my breath that this movie would end with Munchie's head exploding, like in my alternate ending to the last movie, but we do get this. Now, does the movie end there? No, I think you can pretty much guess how it ends, but can we just pretend that the movie does end in a giant explosion?
Well, show's over. What do you say we go home?
And I mean, that would be a pretty badass way for Munchie to die. So, you know, maybe I've been a little hard on Munchie. Yeah, maybe he's not so bad. You know, who among us hasn't committed their fair share of felonies? And what even are those? You know, serious crimes? Well, who gets to define that? Define serious. Define crime? And in the end, that whole counterfeit money thing led to Linda applying for a job at the Treasury Department. So it all worked out. Chris made up with Jennifer, the bank extended the loan on the house, Linda might bang the Treasury guy, Munchie dies in a ball of fire, everybody wins. At the end of the credits, it says that the Munch will return in Munchie Hangs 10, which obviously didn't happen, which is a good thing because I really want to close the door on this character. A friend of mine recently asked me if I had to, would I rather watch Munchie or Mac and Me? And the answer is clearly Mac and Me. The wheelchair scene alone puts that movie leagues ahead. Maybe I should revisit Mac and Me. I mean, it's been 10 years since I did that video, so let me know in the comments if you want to see me revisit Mac and Me. Now, overall, I never thought I would say this, but I think this is a much better movie than the original. And I think part of that is because the original Munchie set the bar so low. And for a kid's movie, I have to say, I think the actors did a decent job. The child actor who played Chris was a noticeable improvement over the actor who played Gage in the first movie. Like I said before, Andrew Stevens plays a different character, but the job is basically the same. Play the villain with exaggerated expressions and over-the-top physical comedy. I've seen a ton of this in kids' movies over the years. It's clearly what they were going for here, even more so than in the first movie. So I gotta give him credit for even just the commitment to the role, because my back hurts just watching some of this. I also think that the story in this movie is better than in the last. Now, I wouldn't call it a good movie. There are hundreds of family films I would recommend instead, but it's definitely better than Munchie, and I'm glad that I reviewed it, and I have all of you to thank for that because you guys encouraged me in the comments to check it out. So I want to thank all of my supporters on Buy Me a Coffee, Patreon, and my YouTube channel members. I want to thank all of you for tuning in, but that's pretty much it for this one, and I'll see you all next time. Oh, that was a crazy explosion! Hey, do you guys see that little creature burning alive in the back seat? It's probably what that smell is, right? You know, the smell of burning creature flesh. Look, he's trying to say something, but I can't hear him over the raging flames that the car is completely engulfed in. I can read lips, though. Let's see, I can read his lips. He's saying that he can feel his soul being slowly dragged down to hell. That's not good. Seems like each episode just keeps getting darker and darker.
Yes.
That's what it feels like now. You don't go to the gym for a few months and you get some physiotherapy and you're just sore as hell. This is what adulthood is. I guess this is just life now, you know? Every year things just get more and more stuff gets sore. You know, you get injured more and more doing nothing. It sucks. It's over. Just throw me in the trash.